Star Trek, but she didn't put that one in there. And I've heard that somebody let it leak, besides Megan, just now, that I do magic tricks for the kids at school. Thanks, Sarah. So Sarah's going to be my volunteer now. Come on up, Sarah. Thanks. Yeah, okay. Since it was promised, we have to, Sarah. We have to. And by we, I mean you. Really, I just wanted to see how red I could make Sarah. I really. Apparently pretty red. That's pretty good. All right.
I have never, ever been a volunteer in a magic show before.
You're perfect then. You won't catch it. All right. So this is at Elm Grove Elementary, where I'm the librarian at. The secretaries in the office have kind of made it a tradition when a new student comes in. They come in and I introduce myself, and Miss Ratliff, the other librarian, introduces herself, and I show them a magic trick, and this is the magic trick. There we go. So these are the sponges. For the sake of the jokes that'll go through your head, we're just going to call them sponges, not sponge balls. I'm going to take this sponge, I'm going to put it in this hand, and I'm going to take this sponge and put it in Sarah's hand, and she's going to hold on to it really tight and hold out her hand like this. Now I'm going to come way over here, and I'm going to try to blow this one all the way across into her hand. And if your hand falls off, I apologize. Sometimes that happens. I blow too hard. All right. Did you feel it?
No.
Not at all? Oh man, you better open your hand. I might have messed up. Thank you.
You're a hoot.
And so I'm not actually a magician. But I did, as a college job, work at a magic store where I sold magic tricks. And when they found out that I was in elementary education at the time, they decided that I was going to be the one that taught all the kids the magic tricks when they bought them, because all the actual magicians that worked there didn't want to deal with it. So, all joking aside now, I want to talk to you about why I am passionate about what I do. Because I do a lot of goofy things in the library. I do silly voices, I do fun read-alouds, I do magic tricks, I do fun, engineering projects to go along with books and things like that. But why do I do it? Well, one of the verses that stands out to me is Ephesians 6:4. It says, "Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger." That's not quite that part. "But bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord." Well, in order to do that, and do that completely, they need to be able to read the Bible. And in order to do that, they have to actually want to read. So, ergo, I try to get them excited about reading in as many ways as I can. I try to make reading magic. I try to make it exciting. I try to make it goofy and silly and funny. More importantly, I just want them to realize that reading is fun. So that's why I do what I do. So, I don't need to teach myself tell myself, though, about how to be a goofy, silly reader and to read in silly voices. I do that already. I just come by it naturally. I am the dictionary definition of an extrovert. I am energized by large groups. I do not get nervous in front of groups of women that are staring at me awkwardly because I'm making goofy jokes. I don't get embarrassed easily, so it's easy for me. But it can be easy for everybody. It just takes a little practice. Even introverts and even people who feel awkward making silly voices and feel embarrassed, when their kids don't like the book that they're reading and stuff like that. So, I have 3 steps for you today to help you help your kids get excited about reading. I could give you a bunch of statistics and stuff like that about why literacy is important and what your duty is to make sure that they get it, but all kids are different, Some kids just naturally like reading and some don't. But I am convinced, after having been a librarian for 8 years now, and having taught in the library thousands of kids, literally, that Any kid can be a reader. Any kid. They just haven't found the right book yet. So, the first step, if you want to get them interested in reading early on, is to get yourself interested in reading. We're not all readers. I know I wasn't. I believe it or not, hated reading as a kid. Absolutely hated it. My dad did something for me that you wouldn't expect would have been the solution to the problem, but it was. I, and don't spread this around, forged my mom's signature on a progress report. Why did I do this? Because it was for a grade. I had to turn it in for a participation grade with my teacher. It was all A's. I had just forgotten to do it. And so I thought, even as a kid, my logical brain said, well, it's all A's anyways. They would have signed off on it. What are they going to care? It's all A's. I'm going to sign it. I signed my mom's signature on there and turned it in, and no big deal. Now I get the grade. Whew, all's right in the world again. All was not right in the world. I have a horrible signature. So the teacher in 2.5 seconds saw right through it and called me out into the hall, and I immediately broke down and said, I'm so sorry. I love you so much. No. And of course, my parents were called, and my dad's first reaction was, you idiot, why didn't you sign my signature? I have a horrible signature. Your mom has a beautiful signature. You totally could have gotten away with it. I would not have remembered whether I signed your dadgum from first. So first of all, smack for being an idiot. And then second, you're grounded for a month from all television. And my first response was, that's not fair. What am I going to do now? I'm so bored. And his snarky reaction was, read a book. Well, I pouted for 3 days first before succumbing to the suggestion. And then I did pick up a book. And it was a Hardy Boys book. And I loved it. And I read every single Hardy Boys book that there was. And then after that, I was like, oh, nothing's going to be as good as Hardy Boys. But then I found Chronicles of Narnia and got excited about that. And then I found something else and got excited about that. And suddenly, I was a reader. And even when I did have access to the TV, now all of a sudden I was reading too on top of watching TV. So, get yourself interested in reading as an adult right now. And here's the first step. Find books that you're interested in. Not everybody is interested in the same kind of book. For example, I'm all about sci-fi fantasy. If it's not a made-up story, I almost am reluctant to read it even now. Although I have stretched my genre horizons just a little bit for the sake of the kids. But, you know, the woman who sits next to me every day at school, Karen Ratliff, who is a great compliment to me, and my reading preferences, she enjoys the realistic, you know, girly historical fiction kind of stuff, and which is great because I don't read those at all. So it's great that she reads them because then she can, you know, talk to the kids that don't read what I like. So find books that you love. And I don't just mean grown-up books, although it is great for your kids to see you reading. What I mean is find picture books that you can read to your kids that you're not going to be bored out of your mind with. Because they're out there. I promise. There's some really good picture books. And like I mentioned earlier, be willing to try different books. Because if your kid doesn't like the book you're reading, well, you just haven't found the right one yet. So try a different kind of book. And then a different kind of book. And then a different kind of book. Until you've pegged what kind of reader they are. And then, most importantly, if you're just totally lost and don't know where to even start, try to think back on the books that your parents read to you, or your librarian read to you, or your teacher read to you that you just loved. Those classics. Guess what? Kids don't care if they're a classic. They don't care how old they are. They don't know. At least not when they're, you know, the age we're talking about. Read it to them. They'll love it. Just like you did. They're your kid after all. Step number 2, after you get yourself interested in some books, and specifically picture books, then you have to get over yourself. That's the hard part. And I don't mean that in a rude way. I don't think I mean it in a rude way. What I mean is, don't be embarrassed. They're a kid. If you sound embarrassed about the book or are afraid to use silly voices and do goofy, silly things to make the book more interesting, guess what they're going to be? Yeah? Have fun with it. Cut loose. Use silly voices. And here's a fun one. Ask them questions. What did you think about that? Isn't that cool or what? Would you like to be this character? Or what was your favorite character? Or what was your favorite part of the book? That's one you can ask for any book. What was your favorite part of the book? Like the book with no pictures. My kid's favorite part of the book every single time is where I have to say boo-boo butt. My best friend in the whole wide world is a hippo named Boo Boo Butt. They laugh every time. By the way, if you've never read the book with no pictures, you have missed out on a very important part of life. I'm just telling you right now. It's a new one by B.J. Novak, so if you're a fan of The Office, B.J. Novak was in that for a while, off and on. But yeah, he's a hilarious author, and he wrote a book called The Book with No Pictures that literally has a book that has no pictures. It's just white pages with black words and sometimes colorful words. But it starts off, this is a book with no pictures. You may think it sounds like no fun to read a book with no pictures, but here's how books work. Everything the words say, the reader has to say. And he commences to make the reader say some really goofy, silly stuff that makes kids laugh and laugh hysterically. And in case you're wondering, he does put, for your benefit, a warning on the back saying, if your kid is trying to get you to read this book, it's a trick. Don't fall for it. And if your kid's librarian is trying to make you read this book, it's a trick and don't fall for it. But it's still a lot of fun, though. And it's even more fun if you pretend like you don't know what's coming. And most importantly, more important than anything else that I can talk about today, pause for effect, be consistent. Make reading just a part of your life. Make it a daily routine. Bedtime stories, they're awesome. Help kids dream the dreams you want them to dream. Every once in a while, throw in something that has something just appropriate amount of scary in it. Get them to realize slowly the realities of the world. Read stuff that, will help calm them down, yes, but don't make that the prerequisite. Don't only read books that are going to calm them down, And, don't limit it to that. But rhyming books are good at night. They'll help lull kids, especially Dr. Seuss. Dr. Seuss is awesome. Unless it makes them laugh hysterically, then they'll get wired. Just warning you. But here's my practical challenge to you. To be consistent, all you have to do is take one moment out of your day. That's it, just one. Just put away all the other stuff and sit down and read a book with them once a day. That's all it takes. Whether it's bedtime or in the morning, if you happen to have mutant children that get up and get ready early, then you could do that. Or right when they get home from school, just make it the tradition where you come home and you read to them. And you may be thinking to yourselves, man, this guy's awesome. He must read all the time. No, I don't. But I do try to make it at least once a day. Which is why bedtime has always been sacred for me. In fact, I have a funny story about that. I have a lot of funny stories, in case you're wondering. When we just first had Claire, we were living in Georgetown, and I was still working down here. We were staying with my parents while our house in Garlic Creek was being built. And so, I had to leave super early in the morning, didn't get to see Claire at all. And then the only time I was getting to see Claire, because she had an early bedtime, because she slept horribly, was if I just booked it out of school as fast as I could, did 85 down the toll road to get back to Georgetown as fast as I could, and then came home and immediately grabbed her from her dinner and went and bathed her and did a little story, and that was my special time with Claire. Except during the about 3-week period where she screamed bloody murder unless it was mommy. And after about 2 days of battling that, and a little bit of, if I'm being totally honest, a little bit of tears on my side, I finally relented. Fine, go see your mother. I don't care. Because as soon as she would grab Claire, the crying would immediately stop, and Claire would be happy as a lark. Woohoo! Yay, mommy! And another funny story. Don't think that you are not good at reading books just because your kid says you are not good at reading books. I will give you a prime example. You've all heard my voice. I'm very good at projecting and using a loud, clear voice. Partly because I actually went to college on an opera scholarship. So I am professionally trained to have a good, solid projecting voice. I am not going to sing for you today, in case you're wondering. I've already embarrassed Sarah Miller enough, so, you know. Plus, this is not the Craig show. This is about reading. So, the point I'm trying to make is I also really like to sing my kids songs at night. They always get a song, whether it's mommy or daddy putting them to bed, they always get a song at night. They get a book and a song. Minimum. Sometimes it's more if they're behaving, but you know. Well, for a while, my kids, both of them actually, on different occasions, went through periods where they did not want daddy to sing the song. Mommy was a better singer. And I love my wife, but she can't carry a tune. And I looked at my kids, and I had already been through the not getting offended part when you know Claire wanted mommy. So I realized it was not about me pretty quickly this time, and didn't shed any tears. I'm like, I am professionally trained. How dare you say she's a better singer than me? I didn't do any of that. What I did instead was I said, okay, Mom, they want you tonight. Which is a beautiful thing. She can't carry a tune, but she wanted them to sing to her. Wanted her to sing to them, sorry. Reverse the, whatever that is in grammatical terms. I don't know. Pronouns, but yeah, thanks. She was an English major, in case you were wondering. She revises all of my talking and writing. That's what you get for asking me to talk. And so, what I'm trying to say is, it doesn't matter how good you are or how bad you think you are at reading a book. You are not bad. No matter what your kids tell you. Don't let them hurt your feelings. They are kids. They don't know what they're talking about. They also think it's a good idea to stick things up their nose and to eat their boogers, but that's wrong too, isn't it? So don't let your kids convince you that you are a bad reader. And don't let your kids convince you that they don't like books, because they do. They are wrong. They do like books. They haven't found the right one. I don't know how many times I need to say that for you to get it, but they just haven't found the right one. If they don't like reading, that just means they haven't found the right one. Because what you're going to do, and why I am really happy to get a chance to talk to you, is because some of your kids are going to end up at Elm Grove Elementary. I thought she was raising her hand back there. She's playing with the baby. Sorry. Squirrel. The coffee's kicked in case you're wondering. Sorry. I'm this way with the kids in case you're wondering. They just get used to it. I just bird walking. We eventually get there though. What was I talking about? What? Oh yeah, your kids are going to end up at Elk Grove. And this is the first question I'm going to ask them when they want help finding a good book. I'm going to ask them, well, tell me one book that you've read that you really liked. Most of the kids will have an answer for me. You'd be surprised how many kids have an answer for me. And so that gives me a good starting point to find more books that they like. And then this is a book that's kind of like this, but I think it'll broaden you towards this other genre just a little bit. And then, as they get older, I can start to steer them as I learn their little preferences. Until by the time 5th grade rolls around and sweet Laurel in 5th grade just comes to me every time. It's like, okay, Mr. McCarthy, I need a new good book. Okay? Because she just trusts that I'm going to find her a good book. I don't know if I'm going to find the right book, but she likes them all because I said she's going to. But it makes my job a lot easier if you've already been reading to your kids and already had fun with a few books with your kids, because then all of a sudden I have a good springboard and a good starting place to say, well, I only like it when my dad reads me the shark books. I got it. Nonfiction it is. Follow me. Or, I only like princess books. Get that a lot. There's always, inevitably, every year, one little group of girls that all they want is the princess books. And so I have to go through all the Disney princesses, and then I make them branch out to the other princesses that aren't Disney. And then I finally will convince one of them, all it takes is one in the group, one of them to read something besides the princess book. And then all of a sudden they all want to read something besides the princess book. Because whoever I convinced must have been the ringleader. Sorry, I make them sound like little gangs or something. They're not. Oh, God, Karen, there comes the princess gang. Get out of here. So, to recap, get yourself interested in books. Have fun with it. Get over yourself. Don't let your kids convince you that you're not a good reader and that you don't know how to read a book, or that they don't like books. And be consistent. There's one more thing I'd like to address, because, as I said earlier, not all kids are created equal, thank God, and praise God for that. Otherwise, my job would be very boring, and I would have a very limited library. Some kids, they may desperately want to read, and they just can't. They struggle. Kind of like I did. I was virtually a non-reader until 2nd grade. 2nd grade is where the switch clicked on for me, which is way beyond what schools say they expect now. I mean, my daughter, they're expecting her to read and at least be able to sound out words in kindergarten. I couldn't do that. 1st grade, they're expecting them to learn a lot more sight words and get more fluent with their reading. I couldn't do that either. 2nd grade, they're wanting to move to chapter books. I was just barely reading in 2nd grade. But look at me now. I'm a librarian. I'm surrounded by books every day. I love books. Can't get enough of books. So, if you have a struggling kid, don't worry. I'll get there. If you have a super brainiac kid that is already reading like War and Peace at 3 years old, don't let them read War and Peace at 3 years old. But first of all, but for those, it's a different kind of struggle. For them, it's, don't push them too hard. They don't need to be reading at college level in 1st grade. Let them enjoy being a kid. Because every kid, when they get older, is going to remember some picture book that they loved. And it's going to remind them that they really liked that. Maybe there's other books out there I might like. Because here's what I tell kids every year. Every time I think I've found my favorite book, I find a new favorite. As a kid, it was Hardy Boys. Branched out a little bit since then. As a grown up in college, it was Clive Cussler dirt pit adventure novels. Ooh, real manly stuff. And then when I'd exhausted those, it was Harry Potter and Percy Jackson, and more recently it's stuff like One and Only Ivan, man, or Out of My Mind. Good books. And these are books that are in my library too. I'm not talking about grown-up books from a bookstore. I'm talking about books that your kids will be reading one day, probably, if I have anything to do with it. Books that make them think outside the box. One and Only Ivan, by the way, is really awesome because it's written by a gorilla. Chapter book, written by a gorilla, named Ivan. It's based on a true story. Out of My Mind is, so one of those books like Wonder that'll just blow kids' minds and open up their minds to new realities that they didn't even realize. It's a realistic fiction that's told from the point of view of a girl who has, I never can remember what she has, but a disability that makes it so she can't talk and she has very little control over her body. And so people don't realize that she is a photographic memory and brilliant mind trapped inside a body that can't talk or move correctly. Cerebral palsy, there we go. She's got severe cerebral palsy. Until finally she learns somebody helps her communicate and start to communicate, and people start to realize just how brilliant she is. So you start off with the books that they just like. And then once they trust you, well, then that's where the real fun starts. They realize, man, I like so many books that Mom suggested. Maybe I'll like this one because she suggested it too. But I'm not going to tell her that because then she'd get big head. Yeah. All right. Before I open it up to questions, it is question time, right? Okay. Yeah. Before I open it up to questions, do you mind if I pray real quick? Okay. Lord, I pray that that you would give us a heart for serving our kids. That those hearts would be humble, so that no matter what our kids say, it would not deter us from helping them to read. And Lord, more importantly, I pray that they would learn to read so that they can teach themselves about your word, about your law, about your love for us through your Holy Bible. I pray that as you develop them as readers, that you would also develop in their hearts a desire to want to know more about you and read the ultimate book, your word. I pray all these things in your Son Jesus' name. Amen. Thanks.
All right, yeah, we have plenty of time for questions if y'all have any. And if not, then we can go back to visiting whenever y'all run out of questions or if y'all don't have any. So.
I really liked what you said about the ultimate goal of teaching your children to, give them to read the Bible, to want to read the Bible. So as a parent, if you do have kind of limited time to read to your children, do you choose like the Bible story, or do you choose it like at bedtime? I'm like, we always do a Bible story at bedtime, but as I'm hearing you talk, I'm like, is that what I should be doing? What are your thoughts?
Can I choose that? So every night we read a Bible story to our kids, and in fact
That's the non-negotiable story in our house.
And it's non-negotiable for us too. In fact, we'll often use like their songs and an extra book as if they are disobeying us, and we're like, you are wasting time, and you're going to lose these things. Like naturally, you're going to lose these things, but we never take away the Bible. Consider that like a foundational thing. And so I would definitely say prioritize the Bible. You have a limited amount of time. And it's extra. And it's important, but more important is the truth of the word. But it's something that we won't take that away. That they get it no matter what. But, so.
And side note to that is, another way to answer that question is, it depends on how you're reading the Bible. As you're reading it as someone interested in it, doing all the things that I talked about, having fun with it, using voices for the different characters, and making it fun for the kids, and not using it. And I don't want to misconstrue what she said. It is a non-negotiable, but we still make it fun. I guess is what the point I'm getting at. We don't. Don't ever use Bible stories as a punishment. No. You will read it and you will like it. Yes.
Do you read from the Bible, which I myself have a hard time understanding? I mean, if you're reading the old English or do you read the children's Bible?
We have always read from a children's Bible, a storybook Bible. And we cycle through the different stories, or most of the time we just let them choose which story they want to hear. But Claire is getting, our 5, almost 6-year-old now, is getting to the point where we are starting to transition to reading limited things from the actual adventure Bible that she got. And I say limited because I'm not going to go read Romans chapter 9 to her, because it would just, and she'd be bouncing all over the place because she wouldn't understand a word I'm talking about. But yeah, reading some of it start off. I think where we're starting is reading some of the stories that she's familiar with, but in actual Bible speak. Not. Because, I don't know how many times I've gone through a storybook Bible or a story that's based on a Bible story, like The Fox Walked Alone, which is about a fox that ends up on the ark, and finds the other fox, and they bounce onto the ark together. And I'm like, you should know, Claire, and I always have to say at the end, you should know, we don't know that this actually happened like this. This is not the real Bible. It doesn't say anything about 2 foxes and one walking. It does not say any of that in the Bible. It's based on Noah's Ark, but it's not. So the storybook Bibles are a great start and a great foundation, but we're still trying to figure out at what point we transition. We're starting to, but to be honest, Claire gets pretty bored hearing it from the actual Bible. So we may not be there yet, but that's the ultimate goal, right? To transition them to the real Bible. Yes?
So I have older kids as well as a toddler. So for say a 5th grader who doesn't read and has really never, except for maybe Wimpy Kid and Big Nate, how do you get them to read something besides grounding them for a month?
Well, the other story is that your dad just flat out got rid of all the TVs for 2 years.
Well, that was a whole other punishment, though.
I don't think my husband would hear.
No. You don't have to do that. I would not recommend that. Well, I don't know. It actually was really cool. But it was beside the point. Anyways. I still struggle with that, too, as a librarian, trying to get them interested in stuff. Where I've had the most success, and this is debatably called success. I think it's success. Some of their teachers don't, because they're old-fashioned. Is in graphic novels.
Okay.
Where the only words in the book are typically like a very short description of a change in scenery or speech bubbles, things like that. But you can find graphic novels, a lot of them nowadays, that are graphic novels that are adaptations from an actual book. Like they make graphic novels of all the Percy Jackson books now. So there's a graphic Bible, yeah. Yeah. But there are a lot of really good, really well-written graphic novels out there that get kids like that much more interested And once they start reading those graphic novels, it used to be the only, graphic novels or comic books that you could buy would be like Garfield comic strips or something like that, which is good in a way. It gets them reading at least, gets them building a sense of humor, that's for sure. But some of the appeal of the Wimpy Kid ones I've found are that it's got a lot of little doodles and pictures and stuff like that. And so transitioning from something like that to a graphic novel, which is actual, like, well-written, well-thought-out, comprehensive storyline at least, just told with pictures, I think is a great way to transition them to more deep thinking about stories. And once they've transitioned to that, it's much easier to say, hey, well, you read this graphic novel over here about Percy Jackson. Would you like to read the actual chapter book now? Now that you've read that? And the other great thing is, and this is a great thing for struggling readers too, I am really, really a big advocate of graphic novels, and not just because I grew up a comic book nerd, but because you can take a Percy Jackson novel, which is written at a 4th or 5th grade level. There are some kids in elementary school that will never get to that reading level, and they will never get a chance to read it with their friends because they just struggle all throughout school. But the graphic novel version is written on a 2nd grade reading level, and every kid's almost is going to get to that point. And so now what you've done is it's not cheating. What it is it's now putting them on a level playing field with their friends that are reading 4th and 5th grade level, and now they've read the same book and can talk about it with them. And so suddenly they're readers now too, and they have more confidence because they are able to talk on the same level as the higher readers and finish the book within a day or two, which is even more important. Yes?
So I have the opposite. So my kid's 2, and I'm hearing that he may have to read by the time he's in kindergarten. I don't know these things.
Nah.
Well, are there resources or things I need to be doing other than sitting next to him and reading? Because he can identify letters, but right now, so I've got a few years.
Well, let me give you 2 answers to that. Our daughter, Claire, she just, from birth, really loved books. Like, she is off the walls, like crawling all over stuff all the time and constantly, and when she talks like this, and she's just all over you, and daddy, and daddy, and daddy. But, sorry, I don't know where she gets that from. But you would put a book in front of her, and she would just sit still and just flip through the pages, figuring out what the story was about for like an hour solid. So that was a huge blessing for us. And because of that, she also wanted to learn what the words were saying very early on. And so she demanded, in typical Claire fashion, that Mommy teach her how to read. And so Megan went and got a book called How to Teach Your Child to Read in 100 Easy Lessons. And they went through a lesson a day. But she was only able to do that because Claire already wanted to know how to read. If you happen to have a miracle child like that just wants to learn how to read, that's a great place to start. It's an older book. It's called How to Teach Your Child to Read in 100 Easy Lessons. It was very useful for Megan too, because it walks you through and it gives you what you're supposed to say, what the kid's supposed to say, what you're supposed to do, what the kid's supposed to do, and it gives you everything laid out there for you so that you don't have to be an expert reading teacher to do any of it. So if you want to do that, and you think your kid has the attention span for it, then go for it. If, though, you don't have that kid, which is almost everybody else, James is not that way, for example, just read to him. Read them books of different varieties. If they just make sure that at home, if you're going to buy books, don't buy 50 books about Paw Patrol and no other books. Just buy a wide variety. And when they get bored of that one Paw Patrol book that you bought them, they'll look at the other ones, and suddenly they'll realize that they're interested in those too. It's kind of the same idea behind it. You're teaching them without them realizing that you're teaching them. I don't think there's anything more valuable than reading to your kids, as far as teaching them vocabulary, teaching them life lessons, teaching them how to read. I mean, it's all there. And if you do it just once a day, I mean, think about that. A book takes, 15 to 20 minutes to read, depending on the book, as you get older on average. And so that you're doing that once a day. So that's, oh gosh, I'm not even going to do my math brain. But you could do the math, over a week, that's suddenly like over an hour that you've read to them in a week. And then over the course of a year, I mean, a lot of hours that you've read to your kid, and a lot of words they've been exposed to. So the simple answer is just keep reading to them, and then don't worry about it.
One more thing.
Yes.
Can we get a demonstration of your silly voices?
Oh, I wish I'd have brought a book. I do. What?
Just a few pages.
Wow, you really do have some Berenstein Bears. She just travels with Berenstein Bears books. I'm not sure whether to be impressed or weirded out. Okay. That habit. Let's see if I know any of these. That helps.
Craig, don't you have the book with no pictures memorized?
I do. I could just recite it from memory. Okay. So imagine I am holding a book. And it is a white book with black letters that say "The Book with No Pictures" by B.J. Novak, and blue letters down here. So you totally got it memorized. But just a few times. This is a book with no pictures. It might seem like no fun to read a book with no pictures, but this is how books work. Everything the words say, the reader has to say. That's the rule. So that means, even if the words say blork, wait, what? That doesn't even mean anything. Blurf. Wait a minute. Is this whole book a trick? Can I stop reading yet? No. Wait. That's not even the funny part. Thank you, though. And Sarah can relate because Addie got obsessed with this book this year, and she wants to read it like every day. I stopped letting her check. I want you to know you should thank me because it was actually in a few weeks ago, and I didn't let her check it out. I told her it was all checked out. Oh no! So the next part is, the next part is, I am a monkey who taught myself to read. That's not true. I am not a monkey. Yes, I am a monkey. Also, I am a robot monkey. What? And my head is made of blueberry pizza. All right. Can I stop reading yet? No. I have to read the rest. There are more pages. Yes. Okay. That yes was the kids' voices, by the way, in case you're wondering. All right. So my only friend in the whole wide world is a hippo named Boo Boo Butt. They laugh and laugh and laugh hysterically. And the kid I'm reading this to is the best kid ever in the history of the entire world. Because this kid chose this book even though it has no pictures. Because kids know this is the book that makes adults have to say silly things. And make silly sounds like, wait a minute, what? Oh no. Those are the little words that the kids don't know that you're actually reading. They think it's just you. See. I know I can do it. It's a whole big page of noises. I got to picture it. Okay. Glurgawako, my grumpadoo. Aye, burr, burr, burr. Oomph, blickety, blackety, blackety, blickety. Beep, boop. It's a lot of easy. Badoingy face. That's the funny part. So there we go. See, she was right. I really do have it memorized. So obviously I have some favorites. So if you do end up with kids at Elm Grove, they'll hear Book with No Pictures. Yes?
Do you always do the
You know, for certain books, yes. Like the Elephant and Piggy books, where it's Piggy and Gerald are talking back and forth to each other. I always use the same voices because that's just what naturally comes out. So I try not to when I'm doing silly voices, I try not to overthink it and try to use whatever just comes out when I'm not thinking about it. And I'll just read the book out loud fast without thinking about it, and whatever voice comes out, that's what I'm stuck with, because I know that that's what's going to come out when I'm not thinking about it and I'm into the story. So just don't overthink it, I guess is the point. Whatever silly, goofy voice comes out, that's the voice you're stuck with. Even if it hurts your voice desperately every time you read it, that's the voice I'm stuck with now. Yes?
Okay, so I have a little bit of both. My oldest loves to read and will read it all and just absorbs like a sponge and then above her reading level. And then my son, I guess like you were, hates it. So he's about to turn 9 and he still hates it. I have actually, we did Percy Jackson together. I read to him and he tried to read a page and I read a page. We got halfway through and then we kind of fell off the bandwagon, but we just falls into your consistency area, I know. But
No. It's okay to give up a book.
I need a book that he'll be interested in. His reading level is really shaky because he never read it. But I looked at the Hardy Boys. I don't know if Hardy's on the left not, but
They're written on a 4th or 5th grade level.
seeing that,
Yeah.
immediately.
Let's see here. Book for a boy. Did he like the Percy Jackson stuff? Just couldn't stick with it, or was he interested in it?
He loves Harry Potter and he loves
Okay.
Percy Jackson, but he can't read at that level.
Okay.
Anywhere near that yet.
Going down the bookshelves with my brain. There's a series. Oh, what's it called? Come on, brain. I can picture the book. It's a series that is about the Greek gods, but it's written on it's about this long, and it's written on a much more like 2nd or 3rd grade reading level, which is why I got it actually. And it's called, it'll come to me in a second. I would know exactly where to go if it was in my library. Okay, I'll email you later. How about that? But it's a book about Greek mythology, and it's like the Greek gods as kids, kind of like Percy Jackson-esque, but it's Zeus as a boy and Poseidon and Hades, and they're brothers, and so it's them fighting monsters together and stuff like that. Very Percy Jackson-esque, but it's.
You know any series that like nonfiction, historical, but for a lower reading level? Because he loves he loves things about Lusitania and like things about like historical things that really happened, but I haven't found anything.
Have you tried the I Survived series? I Survived series? It's a whole series of historical fiction books, and it's made up characters but in real historical events, and it's I Survived the Battle of Gettysburg, or I Survived the shark attacks of 1912, or I Survived...
Is it called Heroes in Training?
Heroes in Training, thank you! Heroes in Training, that's the book. Thank you, Google. Amazon. Woo! And I Survived. Kids are addicted to them. Oh my goodness. They are like an end of 3rd grade, beginning of 4th grade reading level, but they're short, so it makes it a quick read for kids. It's let's see, there's that, and then then I can give you some individual ones, mostly written by Bill Wallace. Red Dog by Bill Wallace. It's a great one. Where the Red Fern Grows.
Oh, that was my favorite one.
Yeah. Where the Red Fern Grows. Yeah. And I'm going to warn you, if you're going to read it with your kid again, you're going to cry all over again. You ever do every time. You've got to, though. That was like my favorite book as a kid. And Red Dog, oh my goodness.
I had
Sure.
For those of us with younger kids, and I think they make it for older kids too, they have this little subscription magazine. It's called Baby Bug, and they're like this big, and they just have these quick little rhymes and stories in them. And Vaughn loves it. It's like $20 for 9 issues in a year, and you get a new one.
Yeah.
And so like I'll hide them away too, and I have a different baby bug in each room. Anyhow, so those are great. My kid's 2.5, and he asks for Baby Bug constantly.
And it's so fun for them to get mail.
Yeah, and then, he gets a package. It's exciting.
And my kids, my parents bought our kids the Highlights magazine, isn't it?
So it's like highlights
That's-
for little kids.
Yeah.
And so if anyone's looking for something like that, it's called Baby Bug.
Baby Bug.
And then the older one is for like the preschool kids. It's called Ladybug. But it's Cricket Media, I think. Yeah. I can post it on the Facebook page too.
So my daughter's 3.5 and is like really shy, and I can tell it's going to be like hard to teach things because like whenever we're working on letter recognition, I'll be like, hey, what's this letter? And I know she knows it, and she makes stuff up all the time. So I have a really hard time teaching her. Do you have any creative, and I know this isn't the age group you work with, but do you have any creative ways to work with learners who don't really like the formal setting of learning? You know what I mean? Or like in like letter recognition, because when I ask her things, she doesn't like to be grilled, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think it has to do with like her shy personality too, because she starts making stuff up. But if she walks by something, she's like, oh look, there's an R like wreath, and I'm like, yeah, that's right. Like in her natural setting, she can.
I think a fun way to slip that in. Yeah, there are certain books that are written just to be silly. Like I can give you an example. Z is for moose. Is hilarious. It's about, and what you can do is you can slip in little questions like, is that what that's supposed to be right there? No, it's supposed to be this, because she'll just think you're being funny, you know. But it's a great way to test her letter knowledge and letter sound knowledge and stuff like that, because as you're reading it, this moose who's supposed to be on M, so you have to anticipate. So it's an anticipation thing all throughout the thing. He keeps slipping in there. Is like, is it my turn yet? You know, and see, there was my natural voice for the moose. You just heard it. And he keeps slipping in there only to find that when they get to M, it's a mongoose and not a moose. And he's like, that was my turn! Oh my gosh, you guys are awful! And so they end up slipping him into Z as Zebra's friend Moose, you know, at the very end, and it's hilarious. And so, yeah, it's stuff like that. And then Chicka Chicka Boom Boom. Just books that make letters fun. There are tons of them out there. LMNOPs. So LMNO and then the word peas, P-E-A-S.
Okay.
And it's these little peas that jump around the page and it's hilarious. Let's see, what's another good one? Ooh. I love Chris Van Allsburg. The Z was zapped. The illustrations are just fantastic. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I would say the way that I address that is the way I address all things is just try to make it goofy and silly and fun.
Okay.
And what I do is I make it goofy and silly and fun so that they don't even realize that they're learning.
Okay, I think that would work good with her.
Yeah.
I'll add that. So I was like, when Claire asked about reading, like I said, I was like, I need a step-by-step and do this. And Craig looked at me, he's like, you're crazy, our daughter's 3.5, 4. You do not need to be teaching her to read. I was like, no, she has to read by kindergarten. I was like totally stressed out. And by the time kindergarten started, I was like, I don't want her in kindergarten because they have to know.
Don't stress out like that, by the way.
Yeah. And
It's nuts.
so he was helping me keep a lid on it. And honestly, like, I think the biggest takeaway that I learned from Craig is just to make it fun at this age, like especially the preschool. They will get to a point that they're going to be stressed out in school. That's just going to happen. And at this point, you're just trying to help them have find the joy in it. And like you said, I mean, if it's conversations walking down the sidewalk and they see something, that's time that you're teaching your child. They're like, yeah, that is art. Way to go. I think that's when, like, most of the conversations in terms of teaching were in the car. We're driving around. We would just turn off the radio and to talk about what we see. And it's like, let's talk about the letter T. What do you see out there that starts with T? Trees or whatever it might be. And so just have fun with it and make learning a joy, not so much a task. Yeah. But don't get to the point that it's a task.
And there's going to come a time when, reading is for grades, and your school, if you go to Elm Grove or another school, they may do stuff like AR, which is, reading tests and things like that. But even at that point, it's really important that you stress to the kids that reading is not the goal. Like even the AR tests, we try our hardest, but kids put a lot of pressure on themselves. But those things, when I say AR, sorry, it's accelerated reader. It's a reading quiz system so that it constantly monitoring kids' understanding of books. So to make sure that they're reading books that are on a level that's going to help them grow as a reader as fast as possible. And what they do is they set goals as to how many points they're going to get within a certain time frame, and then they have to read books that help them get those points. And the point of that, even that, it seems like it would be a very pressure-filled thing for a kid, and even for a parent, to say, "Oh my gosh, my kid's not making their goal. What am I going to do?" But that's not. And teachers may even lose sight of this too. So, you may have to remind them of this, and you can say, "Mr. McCarthy said it. Hate him." But the point of those, the true goal of those, is not to put added pressure on your kids and not to pressure them into reading more and reading harder books. It's not the point. If that's what you're going for, totally missed the point. That is an exercise in goal setting, which is a useful skill for any age. We're just trying to instill it in them at a very early age so that it becomes a habit that will carry them to adulthood. Like my challenge for you guys today. Read one book with them a day. That's a goal to work towards. If you don't reach the goal, then you just revisit it and you do something more realistic. For after you've monitored it over a period of time, you say, I don't think I'm going to reach that goal. What was I doing what could I do to help improve that goal? Or if I reach that goal, what could I do to exceed it the next time? Continually bettering yourself. That's all it is. It's an exercise in bettering yourself. Whether that's bettering yourself by 1 point or bettering yourself by 50 points, doesn't matter. If you set a goal and you work towards that goal, that is setting them up for building good habits in life. That's all it is. I have no idea if that addressed the original question, but I might have gotten off on a tangent because I have no idea what the original question was, but yeah. There you go. Cool. Truth nugget, just in case.
So I have 4 kids. I have a 13-year-old who reads way above level. Is there a resource other than me reading every book that he wants to read? Because he can read huge books way faster than I can. And I have 2 other kids. But is there a resource out there to kind of check and see if it's appropriate?
Oh, yes.
Because even the books that the school wants them to read, I don't feel like they're appropriate. So for his leisure reading, I definitely want to screen it about how to read it.
Yeah. I'll tell you a resource that I use as a librarian a lot, because a lot of the 5th graders get to a point where they've exhausted, especially the really good readers, exhausted the books that they like in my library, and so they're expanding off into different libraries now. And especially for the 5th graders, they can totally read some of the stuff that's at the middle schools and the high schools. You just have to be really wary of the maturity level of the content. So, one resource that I use is called Common Sense Media. It's a website. As far as I've been able to tell, they are fairly thorough in their evaluation of books. They will give an age range that they suggest is appropriate, but then on top of that, they give reasons and address areas of concern that you might have, because they don't know what areas of concern are going to be the biggest areas of concern for you, and then they rate those on like a 1 to 5 star scale, like, you know, sexuality or violence or stuff like that that's within the book, and they rate it, and then they tell you why they gave it that rating, what specific examples are in the book that merit that rating. And so that gives you a good way to evaluate it quickly without having to read the whole book yourself. And then, you know, if a curse word slips in there, you just have that conversation with them later and say, you know, that's not appropriate. Just because you read it in a book doesn't make it right.
Probably a time for one more question. If there is one.
Where are you at with like physical books versus online reading books for kids?
That's a really good question. Where I can repeat the it's where do I stand on physical paper books versus digital books, online books? As a librarian, I promote them both, but I am very wary as to which kids I promote it with. Some kids are more prone to, I guess the best way to describe it is digital addiction than others. I know, because I'm one of them. I have to very, very much limit myself on the amount of screens that I'm in front of, and I can't always do that as best as I can because a lot of my job involves, you know, typing stuff up on a computer. But you kind of have to evaluate your kid. If you have a kid that's constantly like waiting for the next time that they're going to get to have screen time or iPad time or something like that, like they're constantly asking you about it, they should probably rely on paper books. If you have a kid that could care less and in the middle of a movie they want to go read a book or do something else or go play outside, you totally promote digital books. That's fine because it's just a book. You're just reading it on a screen. For example, Claire inherited my digital disease. So it just affects her in very negative ways when she gets in front of a screen for too long. And she gets enough screen time at home, so I don't bother even promoting digital books with her or letting her read on the iPad or stuff like that. We do it sometimes as a reward, but paper books, you know. With James, I don't think it's going to be as big of an issue. Again, our kids are extremely different. But with James, I mean, he could be in the middle of a movie and totally walk away from it. Although he's getting a little worse, you know, like when he's at Hat Creek Burger and he wants to watch the Masters golf tournament. It's not about the golf tournament, it's about the screen. Daddy, he hit it really hard. You know, yeah. So I think you have to evaluate it based on your kid's natural tendencies, I guess is the answer to that question. But both have value. Like you can load 100 books onto a Kindle and only pack the Kindle for a trip, which is really space-saving and valuable and great. But at the same time, you know, you have to weigh the advantages versus disadvantages. And in my mind, if you have a kid that's more prone to be addicted to screen time, then I would say paper books.
They damage the eye though, too.
They do.
Yeah, because I read like a book every other day pretty much, and over the last 3 years, that's when I started getting addicted to technology. My eyes, which hadn't changed for 12 years, so bad. So my doctor said it's your reading, it's your tech reading, because the light damages.
Yeah.
I'm disqualified from doing related.
Ah, yes. So there, I apparently did not make enough for everybody, but Megan can send out the link that this goes to. There's a card right here. Craig McCarthy, Guibrarian, Elm Grove Elementary has my email address. Megan will email out the link that this goes to, but this is a QR code. There's some more. I'll put them up here. I'll give you back your wonderful Berenstein Bears collection there. I'll put them right up here, the extras. You can grab one if you want. The QR code is just something on smartphones. You can have a QR code reader, and it'll take you to a web page that I am still working on. I tried to get it done this week when I had the idea to make it for you guys, but it's lists. Some of the lists include books for kids who like to laugh, which includes a book with no pictures. Books for thoughtful kids. Books like really imaginative, quiet kids. Books for kids who don't like made-up stories. There are those too. Books that empower girls. Books that make grown-ups laugh more than the kids. Ones that are fun for you to read. And I will be adding to that later. At the bottom, you'll notice it says more to come. That's because I didn't get to finish it this week. I will finish it so that you can use it as a resource. It just has about 9 or 10 books on each topic.
It's been a while. You have to have a special app to use this.
Yes, you do. There's a special QR code app. But like I said, Megan will email out the link also that this goes to. Yeah.
I downloaded a QR code, but not once.
And done.